Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. I am Ross Marasso with our returning guest of Michelle Dickey, founder of Consulting for Heightened Awareness. She is a consultant, coach, trauma specialist, and author. She resides out of Rockwell, North Carolina, but is available to you anywhere on the World Wide Web, wherever you are in the world, at cdhrwdrmd.org. Michelle, welcome back to the show.
Hi, Ross. Great to be back. Thank you.
You know, I've been capturing over our conversations that we've had on our previous shows on these nuggets of information that you have of a way of taking something that is very big, especially in the world of trauma and abuse, and giving it like a pinpointed name. Like one of the recent ones you talked about on one of those shows was a future fake, which I loved, which is, let me see if I can say this to you in the right way. That's when someone is promising to do something far off into the future so that things will be much better, but that's just a lie, right?
Right. That's correct. There's another term that we use that describes the future faking as well, and that is them moving the goalpost.
So explain that to me. What does that mean when you say move the
Okay.
goalpost?
All right. Yes. That is how the abusers like to keep their target hanging by a thread. Let's say, for example, a lot of us have had the abusers, promise us that to ride off into the sunset on horseback, kind of romantic fairy tale, right? But we're like, okay, so when are we going to take that trip? When are we going to take that trip? And they never want to. We'll do it. Let's say it's springtime, right? And so the abuser says, we'll try and plan for the fall. Well, then the fall gets here, and they go, oh well, hold on, I want to wait and let's plan for the spring of next year. They keep on moving the goalpost that way, and that keeps their target, trauma bonded to them, hoping and waiting for that, for them to keep their promise, and they never do. And so that's a big tactic that the narcissistic abusers love to use, and that actually is part of the formation of the trauma bond to the abuser as well. If they can keep their target strung along long enough, waiting for the abuser to keep their word, and it's just, and the target find themselves year after year just waiting for it. It's very similar to how many survivors, just stayed because they waited and waited, were hoping that that person they met in the very beginning was going to come back. And then we come to the realization that they're not, because they were just mirroring us to start with, because their true colors, the true colors of the abuser have now come out. And we don't want to believe it at first. I mean, after all, you're giving your all, you're giving your heart, everything to the abuser. So it definitely, that's why the process for healing definitely takes different time frames for everybody. So many factors, like we talk about often, because they're really the bigger picture for each individual circumstance. There's so many little things that go into their own healing for them and what they experience, even though the patterns of abuse are the same. And that leads into this tactic I wanted to share today with everybody. One of the common things that the abusers will do.
Okay.
Right? Yes, to try and keep their target confused. Okay, this is the scenario. All right. The abuser tells their target that their car needs gas. Okay, so the target will say, all right, well, let's go get the gas in the car. The narc abuser will turn around and ask, oh, well, whose car are we taking? Yeah, it's like, wait a minute, whose car needs the gas? That's whose car we would be taking, right?
Right. So it seems like it's a silly question to be asking. So why are they asking that?
It's all part of their playing dumb. Yep. That's how they play dumb. That's another big tactic. We learn this because it's like that right there is such a simple example, that it's like, hold on a second. yeah, why would the abuser even ask when it's the abuser's car that needs the gas? I mean, and you could insert whatever there, about the car. Let's say the tires need checked or whatever it is. And so it's like, okay, because they know that. You know what I'm saying? And so we realized this, and I was like, oh yeah. When a fellow warrior shared that with me, I was like, yeah, they knew what they were doing. I said, and I told her, I said, that just the narc is playing dumb. I mean, that's as simple as that. Because the grown adult should very well know better, obviously. But again, it's just one of the things that they do. Part of their game. They like to keep people confused, and that's another reason why their actions never match words either. I mean, we do have the biblical meaning behind that too, as far as being double-minded, because the double-minded man's unstable in all his ways. Well, there you go. That's these narcissistic abusers. They're walking contradiction, like I talk about on the YouTube channel. And so we start to pick up on these things. And it's like, okay, that's why we also say, for anybody, had that question about what happens to the abuser later in life. And well, people start to see through these kinds of things. And it's like they end up pushing away all good, all people that have good intentions. They end up pushing everybody away because eventually, people that do grow up and mature don't want to be around that kind of stuff. Don't want to be around those kind of mind games. Because that's
Right.
essentially what it is. There you go. And it's like we want to get on with our lives, we want to, be with our families, or, go to work, whatever it is that we need to be doing, to live our lives. We don't want to hang around, those narcs that like to play those head games like that. It's like, no, we don't have time for that anymore. We want to enjoy life, want to, figure out what it is we're supposed to be doing here on this planet, right? So we can't do that if we're, letting them waste our time. That's another reason why they do that too. Why they play dumb and they play those head games
It's to
because they
waste
like.
time.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a big one right there. That and so we realize that.
It
And
seems like there's an extra layer even on top of this. As I've listened to you talk over our previous shows, I'm starting to pick up here that abusers are accomplishing multiple outcomes or strategies at a single time, right? Because it seems like throughout all of this, one of the things that abuser is always working on throughout the day, throughout the weeks and months, is this wearing down your victim just a little bit at a time. I mean, sometimes it can be very direct, but it seems like there's this constant pressure. And when you talk about this overcomplicating of stuff, oh, whose car are we going to take? That would force the victim then all the time, in my mind, to always have to being like mentally on, like it's just never simple with you, right? And so that just sounds like it just becomes an exhausting way as a victim to have to live into that, which seems to be yet another benefit or outcome that the abuser is trying to do. Would you say that that's correct?
yeah, that is very spot on. Exactly, because a lot of survivors will, when they share their story, you do catch that, where it's like over time, it's the wearing and tearing down of the victim, and it does. It is exhausting, and they'll drain their target of any energy, and like you said, because yeah, they would have to be like on top of it, all the time. And so a lot of survivors realize when they finally get away from that and they get out of that situation, they realize that there's peace. They have their energy back. I mean, it's all part of the healing process, but they realize, wait a minute, okay, that's why. And so it's that, yeah, because those constant head games like that, yeah, definitely will. It is exhausting. And a lot of us wonder, it's like, do these abusers not ever tire out of doing that? And
Don't
apparently
they?
not.
No. So do you think that this sort of conflict, while it's wearing us all down as victims, and I'm even willing to accept that, you don't have to necessarily even be in a super dedicated relationship to have this. You can just have Gary or Carol at work who you don't have to work with every minute of the day, but every time you do, you notice that drain. And it seems like it can be confusing sometimes, and that we as society even make excuses for people. Oh, they're just being a pain in the butt. But I wonder if there doesn't need to be a more acceptance of these sorts of tactics and ways of being inside of all of us not being accepted of it, like more presence of mind for all of us, right? That there is a lot more of this going around in our life than we may otherwise recognize. Do you find, so here's the question, when you're working with some of your people who have been around abuse, that they almost become surprised to learn that they didn't even know that a lot of these things were abusive or how it was making them feel while it was going on?
Absolutely. That's all part of what I refer to as that lifting of the cloud of cognitive dissonance. Because, see,
Mm.
cognitive dissonance, yeah, that is just a fancy term for confusion, obviously. And how does that confusion occur? Well, it's when there's a discomfort, between two contradicting thoughts or beliefs. And so that's why the actions not matching words with the abuser will do that. And also because of that, we did many times say, oh, they're just having a bad day. We would just excuse it, blow it off, and without realizing that they were red flags. We didn't know that's what they were at the time. And so, yeah, a lot of survivors, when we get out of that, we realize, oh, we've been around this most of our lives. And it's just another one of those mind blowing moments that I refer to as in the spiritual awakening. It's just more of that clarity that we get. And we realize, okay, so even if it was a subtle type of abuse and we didn't realize that's what it was. And so again, that's all part of learning, the red flag and going, aha, okay, so and going forward, that way we can recognize when another abuser is doing that a lot quicker. And once we see it, then we're like, oh, okay, we're going to keep our distance, and learn how to gray rock. And what that essentially means is that we just learn not to give them access to, like our personal information. Well, really, the bottom line is we're not going to give them any ammunition to abuse us with. So we learn how to do that. It's
Would
all
you
part of
call
that.
it gray rock, like the color gray? Call it gray rock?
Yeah, we call that, yeah, because a lot, I can't remember who the original author is, whoever it is, but I give credit where credit is due. But it's like, because a rock, a gray rock, right? It's just there. And so, it's not that we are not noticing or whatever, but it's how we learn to manage and control ourselves, by not reacting. Because once we realize they're poking and prodding, trying to get an emotional reaction, especially a negative one, once we recognize they're trying to do that, we don't give them that. We don't give, because they're trying to get us to step out of character, really. And then it's like, oh, okay. So once we catch on to it. And so when we're gray rocking, we're just simply not reacting and we're not giving them any kind of emotional supply that way. We're basically starving them of what they're after.
Right.
And
So I'm going to
so
treat them, you're nothing more than just like a gray rock on the ground, and I don't need to give it a whole lot of attention or thought or whatever, like that.
pretty much that is it. Yeah, because another thing we all learn about these abusers is that is what they want. They want our attention like a little toddler does. They want our attention 24/7.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so we learn, oh, hold on a second. And then we're like, how come we can't get anything done? Oh, well, that's why. And the abuser knows that. Let's say, we've got a list of things we want to take care of, let's say in a given day. And we're like, all right, we really need to get to this stuff. But the abuser's over here just trying to garner up as much attention, which keeps our focus off of what it is we need to be doing. And then it's like, okay, so we realize that that's what they're doing, and that because they don't want us to get anything done, because they themselves pretty much don't do a whole lot except go around and try to seek attention and dish out the abuse, the fiery darts, and all of that. That's all they do.
Mm.
I mean, it's, yeah, I'm like, hey, how about you go do something productive, but nope. And it works for them. It has all their lives, right? So it's like, okay, so we understand that. And so when we get to the acceptance part, it's like, you know what? They're the abuser. If they want to change, they're going to have to do that. We're not going to go chasing after them. The abusers want people to chase after them. But if we're like, no, we're not going to do that. And so we stay focused and learn how to, keep our focus on what it is that we need to get done. And then, yeah, we pretty much do ignore them. They don't like it, but that's too bad because it's kind of funny how the roles get reversed. When they are a grown adult who should know better, and then we actually have to kind of like become like the parent if we have to still interact with them. So we take on like a parental role in a weird way. And so we're like, we tell them no, like our parents had to tell us when we were like, hey, I want ice cream before dinner. No. So we learn how to do that. And we end up taking on kind of the parental role. And we didn't sign up for it, but part of accepting the fact that that is what it is. And then that's how we got, I mean, after all, they're acting like a toddler, right? So how else would we respond to them as we respond to them as such? You're behaving like a toddler? Fine then, it's like, So I tell them no, ignore them. And a lot of times, it's not too difficult when we get the hang of it either. So that's just we're no longer excusing their bad behaviors anymore because we're not under that cloud of cognitive dissonance anymore either. And so if we can see it for what it is. And so it's like, okay. And so that's why it's like we accepted it. It is what it is. They are an abuser. They're the ones who's going to have to change. If they want to change, they'll change. But as long as they get what they want, they're not going to. So we learn this. We're like, well, all right, and we stay focused on what it is we got to do and get stuff done. And of course, they're always going to try. A lot of us are still getting Hoovers. Okay, and what those are is that trying to see if we'll take the bait through a text message, an email, or let's say we're at work and the ex narc, whatever, a coworker, and like you said, it does not even have to be intimate or romantically involved. It doesn't even have to be that. It could be an ex roommate or whatever, and they might try to come by and try to see if we will fall for them reaching out to see if there's still an opening of what they're doing, to see if they still have any kind of illusion of control over us. And so that's what we learned to ignore them because many of us learned after changing our phone numbers several times, we were chasing our tail.
Right.
Because, yes. And so we stopped doing that because it's like, you know what? Okay, hold on a second. Because once we realized that, okay, hold up, those were abuser coworkers, and it could be from several different places. What we learn later is we got a Hoover, okay, but it could be from any of them that's got that number. Because let's face it, if it was a workplace, they're obviously going to have that number, right?
Yep.
There you go. Right. So, and we realized it could be any of them. And so that we learned to ignore it, just delete it and block the number, block the number first, then delete it if we must. And then even in email, we'll get that. Oh, this is a classic one too. For those of us that have a website, some of them will hoover through the contact form on our website as well. And so, I could.
Why do you call it Hoover, if I can ask you? Why is that the name?
It came from the Hoover vacuum.
Okay? Okay.
Yeah, they're
yes, they are just a giant soul-sucking thing of a relationship, right?
Yeah. So when they Hoover, they're just trying to see if they can suck their target back into
got it
the relation. Yeah. So that's where that comes from.
Let me ask you something here real quick about this. So as you do your work with your clients and your survivors, in the probably rare, unfortunately, but on maybe the rare occasion that a abuser has realized that that's what they are, and that is something that they now are working on, they don't want to do anymore, and they now realize the damage. Would you say, from the work with your clients and survivors, do you think that they would welcome an authentic communication from an abuser just saying, I did all of that stuff. I know that now. I'm sorry about that. I'm working on it. Assuming this communication does not come with a request to reinitiate the relationship, right? Because that could just be another Hoover attempt that you're talking about. But if that was not that, it was just simply, as authentic as they can muster. I realize I've done this and that it impacted you and in a negative way and so on and so forth. Would you say that your clients and survivors would want that communication, or just no? Would your advice be to a former abuser of just, it is what it is, and you think you're going to help, but you're not, never talk with those people again? Like what would you say?
That's definitely going to be one of the many things that a lot of survivors during the very beginning would love to have that kind of closure.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. But we realize that for a lot of the abusers, okay, that we're not going to get that kind of closure. Okay. If they have not, you know, decided to make the change or wanted to recognize the error of their ways, there's a lot of them that never do. As far as those who do, the ones who do are usually the ones that got used by a parent to dish out the abuse by proxy. They were never really like full-time abusers, because they didn't themselves did not know that what they were doing was the abuse. But once they became aware of it, they were like, oh, I don't want to do that. That totally, once they realized that that's what it is, and that, let's say, the parent who is the abuser was using the child, for example, okay, was using the child to dish out abuse by proxy towards the other parent. But
Mm.
once the child, learns that, oh, that is abuse, I'm going to knock it off, and the child will go and try to reconcile, with the other parent once they've realized, that does happen. But as far as the other, abuser who still dishing it out and doesn't want to recognize the error of their ways and things like that, that one didn't want to change. So you've got different dynamics and things going on here. So it's all about a matter of, we got to become aware of it first, because after all, we ourselves also, we got to grow up, right? And so we had to be made aware that, oh, didn't know that we were engaging in, a little bit of that, some of the stuff like gossiping. We didn't realize we were doing that. We didn't realize that, oh, hold up a second. We're not shouldn't be doing that. That's like, slander and things like that. It's like, oh, we're not going to do that anymore. But we recognize the moot in our own eyes as well. It's all part of that inner work that we do as we are growing and maturing, putting away the childish things and stuff like that, because it's just part of the process. But as far as a abuser who is well old enough and just does not want to change, and it's like, no, we typically distance ourselves. That's that no contact that we do, and a lot of us end up with that limited no contact that we've talked about before, and that's just simply cutting them off at the soul level. Okay, so we're not giving them access to our empathy. We're not giving them access to things that they don't need to get access to anymore. Because see, the abusers that don't want to change, they want us to feel sorry for them. That's how they gain that illusion of control over our emotions. So we learn not to give that to them. We do go through that during the healing process. There's a little season or so of feeling sad for them, because it is, but we overcome that. And then, we might feel a little bad for them. And then we realize that's what they want. So we overcome that as well. And so it's just all part of the process. But all of us went through some of that, because when we first realized it, when the true colors showed and things like that, and this is a grown, let's say they're in their 60s or 70s, and it's like, they should know better.
Right.
But yeah, and it's like, but they still continue to dish out the abuse. And so it's like, okay, and because it's all that toddler-like behavior that we start to see, and so we're gonna, naturally, we're gonna feel a little sorry at first, but we overcome that, And then because it is kind of sad to witness that, like with the grown adult, and it's like, wow, that really is, but we overcome that as well because the
I could
longer we,
see for healing though, right? Like for us to, if we feel a little sorry for the abuser, I guess there's maybe an element of it wasn't that these people were specifically had a problem like with me and were trying to destroy me per se. That was just who they are in the world. And if it wouldn't have been me, it would have been somebody else or something. And like, what a miserable way for that person to have to go through life. So I could see how there'd be a moment in there where we might feel sorry for. But I think what I'm also hearing from you is, and if that's going to be there, maybe be with that, but then also learn to get past that part, right?
yes, absolutely. Yep. You hit the nail on the head right there with that. Absolutely. It is part of it. And, it's an unfortunate thing, but they're going to have to, I mean, if they want to continue, we can't control that. And it's just like they wanted to try and control us, but we learned that we don't let them because we have that control over ourselves. And so we don't react anymore. And, it's like part of that, if we must respond, we learn how to take the time because that's the other thing narcissistic abusers don't like us to do is to step back and take a moment and think about that for a second before we make a decision. And they don't want us to do that.
So I want to keep us confused, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And because they know that if we do that, if we take the time to analyze and assess the situation, that we're likely not going to go with whatever it is they are trying to, propose perhaps or whatever. Yeah, that we're probably not going to. Like they invited us to go somewhere. We don't really want to go there with them. So they come at us really fast with it, hoping that we won't take the time to think, hold on a second, because we don't really want to go there. It's not a place of interest or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to be told no. That's a big thing. And there's a lot of us that have heard the narcissistic abusers tell us that, right out of their mouth, tell us they don't like to be told no. And I was like, I'm not surprised because they do tell on themselves. Now, when we become more aware, we catch that stuff. Whereas before we would go, really? Okay, that's okay. We wouldn't even think if we're smitten, you know what I'm saying? If we're being trauma bonded, we would laugh that off.
Or as you've called it in the past, love bombed and all of those things in the beginning that kind of keep us off base. So, Michelle, we are running out of time here, and these conversations are fascinating as always. And before we even get through all the stuff you're talking about, I'm already thinking about all these other things. But that's why we always have next show. But before we go, and I always like to give you the last word, tell everybody where they can find you.
Okay, sure. Yeah, everybody can always find us right on the website. And that again is cdhrwdrmd.org. Or you can reach out via text or phone call at 704-245-4340. And you can also send an email to michelle.dickey@cdhrwdrmd.org. Or you can check out the YouTube channel, which is titled Narcissism and Cognitive Dissonance. And then, of course, across all the social that this work and ministry is trending on, right on the My Social page on the website. We're sending love and light to all fellow warriors. Thank you for watching, listening, and for your support. Till next time, let's show some gratitude to the Heavenly Father, and you keep being you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Michelle Dickey, founder at Consulting for Heightened Awareness, trauma specialist, author. A pleasure as always. And thank you for everybody who tuned in with us today. Until next time.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
Mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.